Roll call, everyone is here. Mr. Maris is somewhere in the building. He's on his way. So we'll begin the meeting by the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to announce that the board met for 2 exec sessions. One was Thursday, October 24th, and that was to discuss negotiations. And prior to this meeting tonight, to discuss negotiations and bargaining. And I'd like to read a statement that was sent out to the public today. The negotiation teams for both the Hempfield School Board and the Hempfield Education Association are pleased to announce a tentative agreement has been reached between the two parties. While specific details have not been released, both sides believe the agreement is a collaborative effort worthy of consideration by members of the school board and the association membership. We are relieved that there is a deal on the table that potentially ends this round of negotiations and allows us to more fully focus on our students, says HEA President Anthony Giannotti. Both sides will review the agreement and follow the normal internal process for ratification, which is expected to occur in the next month. The previously authorized strike will be officially retracted if both sides ratify the agreement. We are pleased to have reached a tentative agreement that supports our teachers, respects their hard work, and prioritizes the needs of our students, as well as our district as a whole, says Board President Pat Wagner. We are grateful for everyone's dedication to finding a solution that benefits our entire school community. As the process unfolds, both the district and the association express their gratitude to the community for their patience, understanding, and trust in the process. While it may not have unfolded as smoothly as everyone initially participated, both sides are thankful to be closer to a resolution. And with that, we'll move on. Need approval for the agenda for tonight's meeting, please.
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Johnson. Second.
Second.
Thank you. Okay, please, Mr. Maris. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, agenda is approved 9-0. And next will be approval of the minutes from the regular school board meeting held October 8th, the minutes of the Education Policy, Personnel and Legal Committee meeting held October 17th, and the minutes of the Buildings and Grounds and Finance Committee meeting held on October 29th.
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Brady. A second.
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Johnson. All those in favor? Okay. Carries 9-0. Next, I'll turn it over. Dr. Musser is in the hot seat tonight, filling in for Mr. Bermersky. So student, staff, and
All right, thank you. Appreciate it. Yes, tonight, student and staff, we do not have any student and staff recognitions at this point, but we do have student council here to provide us with one of their interesting updates. So take it away, student council.
So recently we've been really busy doing things for the variety show. So that is going to be November 23rd this year. We have a bunch of acts. We're super excited. We had our auditions last Wednesday and there were so many great acts, so much talent and variety throughout the school. So we're really excited about that. We recently opened a school store this year, which I'm sure many of you have heard about. We sold out of our sweatpants and sweatshirts, so business is definitely booming, and we're excited to, we got new shipments in, so we're excited to keep selling that and keep raising money.
Right, thank you.
any questions for student council? Thank you very much. You're free to stay. You're welcome to go.
Thank
It's all
you.
up to you.
Thank you.
Next, we'll move on to residents' requests to address the board. The board provides time of public comment for residents and taxpayers to bring their thoughts to the board, but is not a time for exchange between the board administration and the speaker. We ask that the residents refrain from identifying specific students, staff, or community members by name. Residents and taxpayers who are interested in making public comments must complete the electronic registration prior to 3 p.m. on the day of the meeting. And I believe we have 5 people.
Our first speaker this evening is Emily Smucker Beidler, who will be followed by Pat Landis.
I would, so if we could hold her from starting, if you want to leave, you can get up and leave.
Okay.
I know, but I think some of them want to leave, but they're not
Yeah,
sure how
yeah,
to get
we're-
out of here.
Whenever you want to get up and leave, get up and leave. That would be
But you are welcome to stay.
stay, yes.
It's okay. You won't get attention. Thank you, thank you, thank you for making whatever changes you needed to make to release the gridlock and come to a tentative agreement on our teacher contract. To serve as a member of the school board is not for the faint of heart. Assuming that we are through most of this recent crisis, I think it would be wise to visit the code of conduct put forth by the Pennsylvania School Board Association and do some self-reflection, both individually and collectively, so that we never have this kind of negotiation fiasco again. According to PSBA, Pennsylvania school boards are committed to providing every student the opportunity to grow and achieve. Therefore, boards pledge to lead responsibly, which includes working together with civility and cooperation, respecting that individuals hold different opinions and ideas. Boards act ethically, never using the position for improper benefit to self or others. School boards plan thoughtfully, including allocation of resources to effectively impact student success. And school boards evaluate continuously, conducting a board self-assessment on a recurring basis. School boards communicate clearly. Boards promote open, honest, and respectful dialogue among the board, staff, and community. Several weeks ago, there was a payroll glitch in which teachers were not paid when they were supposed to be paid. And I want you to know this as a school board. It was explained away as an error. However, it was an error that had never occurred before and happened to occur just 2 days after teachers voted to strike in December if they didn't have an acceptable contract. Now, in the old days of Hempfield, saying that this was an error would have been believed. Unfortunately, these are not the old days, and it's hard to know what to believe. Trust and morale has been damaged because of this contract negotiation. Some of our teachers had their mortgage bounce because of this error. And contrary to the image that some would like to project of rich Hempfield teachers, the reality is that many of our teachers live paycheck to paycheck with incredible college debt on top of the other daily cost of living. Throughout this school year, our teachers have continuously shown up to teach our kids. They've continued emailing and calling parents. They've continued to create optimal environments for quality learning to take place. Now it's time to think about what we can do to repair this trust. Please do some reflection on this code of conduct, on what you bring to the table. You have a tremendous responsibility. Our kids deserve nothing but the highest standard for ethical behavior in decency and respect. They, as well as the whole community, will continue to watch your example. Thank you.
Pat Landis will be followed by Caleb Best.
Hi, Pat Landis, retired teacher, resident, taxpayer. Congratulations on your tentative agreement. Although I'm here to say I am truly disappointed and dismayed at your negotiation tactics, timing, and disrespect to your teachers and to this community. A lament that I often heard as an elementary teacher was, "That's not fair." It took working toward a growth mindset to help these students learn to be better, to do better. There are so many examples of the work, efforts, and guidance of my fellow teachers to reach out to our students and respect them as we taught not just academics, but how to be better, do better. I saw the teachers who stopped at the grocery store in the morning to buy fresh fruit and healthy snacks, to sneak into the backpacks of that child living in unstable situations where life really wasn't fair. We helped them with a hand up to be better, to do better. I saw the teacher who gave her student new extension cords because what she noticed in the picture that the student was showing her was not the little dog, but the frayed extension cord behind it. These teachers gave their students the respect and the opportunity to do better, be better. As I watched the ongoing negotiations between the school board and these teachers, I witnessed the disrespect that was shown by this negotiation team and to the teachers, the students, the staff, and this community. Be better, do better. To use social media to present very skewed proposal data to the public in an effort to cause bias against your very own dedicated teachers. Such divisive tactics and timing cause much pain and much worry for many households. Be better, do better. I hope that moving forward, the school board does a much better job of vetting their negotiations representatives because we expect better.
Caleb Best will be followed by Gene Pretz.
Good evening. So I was very happy and a little surprised to get the email about the tentative agreement. I actually had to throw out a lot of my comments because thankfully we've come to this agreement. I hope that it was one that the teachers are able to accept and that they don't feel pressured into accepting. As I can't name names, I try to follow the rules. There was a board member who has been on the board for many years, who said something I think very poignant in one of the recent meetings. It was essentially that you as a board have more than a financial responsibility to this district. You have stewardship over this district. And stewardship means more than pinching pennies and doing the most that you can with the least amount of tax increase that you can get by with. I looked up Merriam-Webster, the definition of stewardship. It has a couple meanings, but the one that clicked the most is the careful and responsible management of something entrusted to one's care. You are entrusted with this district. You are entrusted with making decisions that will make our district the best in the county. You are entrusted with providing a workplace that our teachers want to come to. And through all of that, you will build a district that is coveted by homeowners. I am one of many who chose to move to Hempfield because of the good reputation that it holds. When my wife and I were expecting our first child, we were looking for a home to buy. And of all of the many places that we looked at, one of the reasons that we chose the home we did was because it was in Hempfield. This is a good district. We have amazing teachers. We should not be losing teachers because they do not feel respected because they can get a better wage somewhere else. We have lost too many. In fact, there are many on the resignations list tonight that are going to be approved. Whatever the reasons they are leaving, I hope that this district takes those things into account and understands why people are leaving. With regards to the negotiations, on the website, it claimed that the district was 2.4 million, or the two sides had a gap of $2.4 million in between what the district was presenting and what the teachers were asking for. It just so happens that the state gave us approximately $2.4 million more this year than previous years. Please remember that when you're deciding on whether to put that into capital reserve. Instead of putting it towards buildings, put it towards teachers. Because guess what? Even if we don't have the nicest buildings, if we don't have teachers to teach our children, we're going to suffer. And people will want to move to somewhere else because our schools are failing. Thank you.
Jean Pretz will be followed by Jennifer Meyer.
Good evening, everybody. I was really expecting to be up here again, asking you to come to an agreement with a strong contract. So I'm really glad to hear about the tentative agreement. I'm really hoping that that means it's one that the teachers also feel really good about. And I'm hoping there's going to be much rejoicing, like as soon as everybody's able to vote on it. I just really want to remind ourselves that whatever our teachers' working conditions are, those are our students' learning conditions. And by putting forth a strong agreement with the teachers, giving them a contract that they can approve, that they deserve, shows your investment in our teachers as well as my kids, our kids, the students in this district, your future employees, perhaps. After this, hoping that everything gets signed off, I hope you will take the time to rebuild the trust with the teachers. As you've heard, this is not over. And I've been hearing from a number of teachers who feel like they're waiting for you to signal to them that you can be trusted, that you will respect their viewpoints, and that you're not going to drag them through this kind of a process again. I mean, it was like 40 years ago that they last had a strike vote that I'm aware of. So I hope you will do your best to build that trust. And I think this contract is obviously a first step toward rebuilding that, the teacher's ability to have faith in your commitment. Other ways that you can continue to rebuild that trust is to not only seek out teachers and professional staff's opinions on issues like curriculum or library decision-making or mental health sources, but then also to follow those recommendations. This is the thing that has been worrying me over the past several years. I've seen you disrespecting the teachers before this negotiation process. So I think making decisions that really respect the viewpoints of the teachers and the professional staff and their expertise is an important way that you can build that trust. I think another way that you can build trust is also with the community. A lot of people have been scratching their heads thinking, why did the teachers have to strike to get to this point, right? Or vote to strike, sorry. So what can you do to build trust with us? Well, you can be transparent and straightforward and help us to see that you are respecting the teachers and that you're going to make decisions where we can see where the financial costs are. And we can also believe that you're setting us up with the funds that we will need to do what needs to be done with the buildings or providing for the teachers or other needs that we're not aware of at this point. I think right now we've been disappointed that their funds have not been appropriated in the way that's going to actually support what's actually needed. And people here really care about public education. They're willing to invest in it. Public education is a public good. It's what makes our community really strong. Thank you for your work to support our schools.
And Jennifer Meyer will be our last speaker this evening.
I won't take the full 5 minutes, I promise. Good evening, everyone. Like others have said, thank you for coming to a tentative agreement with the teachers union. As we all know, a strike would have been disruptive, not just to the teachers and students, but to the entire community. And I'm glad that you're able to come to a compromise, hopefully. However, the board's actions during the negotiation process had the stench of politics marring many of its actions, from using graphs in misleading ways to spread disinformation about teachers' salaries, to breaking the agreed upon confidentiality during the negotiation process, and to suddenly be able to come up with a compromise only after the presidential election. Whether it was intended or not, it not only appears to the 4 people that spoke before me, but myself, many of my friends, many of my mom friends, many of my colleagues in the district, that the board has engaged in some very shady and dishonest practices during this process. Now, I'm sure every single person in this room can agree that politics has no place in our schools. No matter how we vote, we all want our kids to have the best possible education ever. I'd also like to remind everyone in this room that the last time the teacher contracts were up for renewal, there were negotiation issues there as well. The teachers started that year without contracts as well. As this has happened twice in a row, it appears that there is a pattern of this board having negotiation issues with the teachers' union. Instead of waiting for this to happen a third time, I propose that you make an amendment to the rules stating that if a contract cannot be agreed upon by a set time, maybe by the end of the fiscal year, maybe by the start of the new school year, then the members of the negotiating subcommittee be replaced with new board members, new faces, new ideas. Let me say that once again for anyone on their cell phones right now.
Taking notes, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Again, I appreciate what you have done, but a pattern appears to be evolving that this board has negotiation problems. If this was any other situation, you'd say, let's bring in fresh faces, new people. So as others have said before you, I encourage this board to take the next 2.5 years before the next contract negotiations start and come up with a better process so we're not having these same conversations in another 3 years. Thank you.
Thank you to our speakers. Turn it back over to Dr. Musser for the superintendent's report.
All right, so super quick report tonight. I just want to draw attention to a really neat event that we had in our high school last week. We had the Junior Achievement STEM Summit. I know there were a lot of volunteers across the community. I know there's some volunteers even in this room, and I wanted to thank everybody for that really neat activity. We also have junior achievement activities that are occurring in our middle schools and also in our elementary schools as they visit BizTown. And it's just a really neat partnership with the community and members of this board and members of our community that come in and work with our students. And just wanted to draw attention to that really neat activity. The only other thing I want to draw attention to is we will be canceling the Buildings and Grounds and Finance meeting on the 26th. So I wanted to make sure I draw your attention to the cancellation of that meeting. That's all I have.
And I will say I participated, along with I recognized people from the audience who participated in the STEM Summit, and it was the second or third year in a row that I've done it, and it's well worth it to be there. It's great to see the kids. Takes a lot of work for the staff, the administration, the support staff to do it because there's 600 kids and they have to get 300 kids through, I think, 7 or 8 stations in basically from about 9 o'clock in the morning, and it's over at 1:15 in the afternoon. But it's really fun to see the kids in that environment. And I think they do learn some things from it. Okay, thank you. I have nothing for the president's report. So we'll go on to representative and adjunct reports. Lancaster County Career Technology Center, Mr. Keener.
Nothing new to report.
Thank you. IU 13.
Nothing new to report. We have our monthly meeting tomorrow evening.
Okay, thank you. Hempfield Rec Center, Mrs. Brady.
Nothing urgently new. We continue on the words are escaping me right now. The capital projects, strategic planning, capital projects. Thank you, Mr. Wagner. Everything's looking good financially, budget wise. We're working on the budget for next year.
Okay, thank you. Safety and Security, Mr. Garber.
Nothing new to report.
Okay, PSBA, Ms. Eshelman.
I have a lot to report. I was
Okay.
able to attend the PSBA Delegate Assembly on Saturday, November 2nd to represent Hempfield. I was able to attend hybridly with PSBA representatives across the state, which was really cool. Discussion and voting occurred on the PSBA legislative platform for 2025. So these are the things that they're going to be working on with legislation to help public schools, including many of the things that we have talked about, including Pennsylvania providing a significant and financial investment in school districts using a fair and equitable funding system. Also enacting comprehensive and meaningful charter school reform, prioritizing mental health needs of students by providing schools with a permanent funding stream and assistance for these purposes. And then also continuing to invest in school safety improvements by, again, providing schools with flexible, local controlled and permanent funding streams. All four of those passed. And then there are also additions to our core legislative principles, including expanding the free breakfast program to a free lunch as something that they want to be working on, and that also passed. Something that was tabled, Dr. Musser, was the use of AI in scoring student written responses. There was a lot of discussion about it. And it actually, yeah, it was tabled because that was something that there's a lot of disagreement about.
It scares people. You can just say it.
Yeah. Some people are like, it's a tool, we should use it. And some people are like, what are we talking about? Scoring kids writing, okay. So that one was tabled for a year, basically. And then two other things that were passed were improving pathways to promote public education, educators as a profession, and basically language that would not allow charter schools to say that it's free, but that public funds are used to support it. So it was a neat thing to be a part of, and I'm excited and glad that PSBA is focusing on these things that will support our schools and our students here at Hempfield.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Mrs. Eshelman? Okay. Moving on to the standing committees, buildings and grounds, Mr. Maris.
Yeah, we met back in October. We had a lengthy review by KCBA on the different options. Some of the prices have been reduced. We decided not make any decision until the contract has been resolved, which hopefully will be here soon. Look for, since we don't have a meeting at the end of November, the first meeting in December, we'll be deliberating on that a good bit more. Mrs. James provided an update on the district's application for the DCED school facility grant. Hempfield was awarded $1.5 million for use on the roofs of LMS and LPC, which is a good thing. Lancaster, Mrs. James also gave an update on the Lancaster area sewer authority sewer project, and its impact on district property. They will be digging to complete replacements starting next week, which should be a few weeks ago, and anticipating arrival on our campus in November or early December. I don't know, Mrs. Hall, if you can share anything more on that. Okay. All right. And also, I believe Mr. Graham gave an update on paging systems projects for LMS and LPC, and that is all.
Okay, questions? Okay, finance, Mr. Wagamuth.
At our Finance Committee meeting in October, Mrs. Hall presented a timeline for the 25-26 budget process. That included updates and forecasts for the Act 1 index and some trends with the Hempfield School District tax increases. And then I did briefly share, and I think I'll restate this again because I think it's important, that over the last 3 years, at least that I've been part of this board, we've increased taxes 3.17% on average year over year. And so that's just something to keep in mind. Our Act One index, which is adjusted, will be at 4.8% this year. Our Act One index came in at 4%. So that is the maximum that we could increase taxes as a board based on regulation. So we had some other discussion around the finances related to the KCBA and some of the building projects and repairs that we need to do. So without getting into a lot of detail, we'll continue those discussions in the future and how that marries up with our financial position. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Questions? Okay, education and programs, Mrs. Johnston.
Dr. Musser and presented update on the comprehension plan and discussions that are taking place with that. Mrs. Dicely and presented secondary curriculum updates. Some of those items are coming up for vote tonight. Mr. Donato requested that we, in the future, we have more in-depth description of what those courses are rather than just a broad stroke information. Elementary summer school, Mr. Hoffman and Dr. Kramer presented information about what they will be doing this summer. And it's a good program for our kids, so hopefully they will get another year of good response, even more children who will come. Elementary science pilot was also presented by those gentlemen, and it's in process of being piloted right now. A much needed upgrade. Our next meeting is, I had to look it up on my phone. So my next meeting is November 20th and on Thursday at 5 o'clock as usual in this room.
Okay, any questions? All right, and policy, personnel, and legal, Mr. Keener.
Thank you, Mr. Donato. Policy Personnel and Legal Committee also met on October 17th. Routine meeting in all regards. We considered de minimis changes to, I believe, 8 policies, all of which were forwarded for second reading this evening, and they are listed on the agenda.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to personnel action items, seeking approval for personnel action items 9, 1 through 10 as presented, please.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Keener. Second.
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Eshelman. Any discussion? Questions? Okay, all those in favor? Okay, believe it carries 9-0. Moving on to financial items. Seek approval for financial action items number 10, B through E, which is contracts, the financial reports, food service reports, and transactions, please.
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Mr. Wagamuth. Second.
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Johnson. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Okay, carries 9-0. Snow buildings and grounds action items. And then finally, other action items seeking approval for items B through J, which is the second readings that Mr. Keener just mentioned for the board policies. Increases to our transportation staff, an overnight trip for the wrestling team, non-sponsored school trips at the high school, approval of some course changes for different courses, and 1 expulsion.
Mr. President, is it too late or appropriate time? I would like to suggest that we take item F, item H, and item I separately.
Okay. I don't have a problem with that. Then let's, other than F, H, and I, is that correct? Okay. Can we have a motion to approve those, please? Thank you, Mrs. Johnson. Second.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Garber. So we're voting on B, C, D, E, and G. And J. Thank you. One at the bottom. All those in favor? Okay, they carry 9-0. And we'll go back up and do the other ones separately. Item 12F, approval of the Health and Phys Ed elective course revision and deletions, which I believe is, if I remember correctly from the Education and Programs Committee meeting, that was changing the sports medicine course to a sports exercise course. So I need a motion to approve that, please.
So moved.
Thank you. Second,
Second.
thank you. Discussion, Wagaman.
I'm just going to state this for all three of those items. Those items came mid-year. They kind of came out of nowhere. And I think just in full transparency, whenever we're getting requests for things mid-year, I would respectfully ask that they be part of a discussion that takes place in advance of coming to the board for approval. They do have a financial impact, those three items. Those three items, even though it seems small, are a $15,000 increase for materials. Now, those materials will last a few years, but then there will be replacement for that. And it also just continues to kind of spread us thin related to how we staff and how we handle that. So fundamentally, I didn't really care if it's 50 cents or $15,000. I can't support those three in this situation.
Okay, any other discussion?
I'll second what Mr. Waldman said. Although these are great, it seems like great programs, they're mid-year, and this stuff should be all part of the budget process. And there's no urgency for these programs, there's no requirement for graduation. And we currently have programs that work.
My understanding is that these are approval for next year's curriculum, not for mid-year this year. That in approving these, we're offering them to be put into the curriculum guide for the students to make their choices for next year, in which case they would be part of next year's budget creation process. And the revisions are, again, my understanding, especially for this Health and Phys Ed course, is that it actually gives us better flexibility in scheduling, which would be a more efficient process to give students flexibility for their scheduling, but also how we are able to schedule the teachers that are assigned to those classes with better efficiency.
You're not wrong in any of that, Mrs. Brady. I think the challenge for me is that we continue to get these one-off changes that come out of nowhere, and they're not necessarily, they aren't required, and they continue to add additional costs for programming. And under the circumstances that we face financially, in good faith right now, I'm struggling to add any additional programs, change programs that continue to cost the district additional dollars that are not required as part of our education process. So in fairness, you're not wrong in any of that. My concern is more the long-term impact, and we've been seeing this trend over the past few years that I've been on the board.
I just want to state
Perhaps
too that
if I'm,
I'm going to state too that there's always a rationale for the change in every single one of these. So saying that it's come out of nowhere, there were many different reasons. There were what Mrs. Brady just talked about. There were student requests. There were other things. So that it's coming out of nowhere, I disagree with. And I think it's a wonderful thing that our administration is always working on this like secularly and coming to us with these things for our students and for our district. And I love that's the way that Hempfield works. And I hope it continues because I think it can only make it better for our students.
Go ahead, Mr. Keener. I do have one other comment then.
Go ahead, Mr. Keener.
Thank you. And I share, it is not clear to me why we are seeing these now. And I'm going to ask Dr. Musser, since these roll up through the secondary side, to maybe elaborate on why they're coming to us now. I agree that they all seem like good courses. I have nothing against any of them. But I do agree with Mr. Walgamuth and Mr. Garber that in light of the other expenses we have, we need to be very sensitive to this. I'm not opposed to these. I just would like to know maybe some additional clarity on why we're seeing them now.
Yeah, I can certainly comment about
Thank
the timeline, then I'll defer to Dr. Dandridge as it was part of his Ed and Programs presentation with the actual coursework, but they are coming to
Oh,
us.
I apologize. I
That's
just
okay.
meant because they were secondary courses, but either of you gentlemen, which whoever is able to answer the question.
I'll do the timeline piece. He can do some of the other pieces. At the end of the day, we have a course guide that we develop every year. It is a monster guide that is basically including of all programming that kids can select from for the next year. We're so far ahead in our planning process. We've been planning for courses years out, that's how it has to work. So that's why that they're coming at this time period. I need approval for them if they're going to make the course guide. If they're not approved, they will not make the course guide. As far as one of the things before I turn it over to Dr. Danage, as far as the staffing piece, we don't run courses that don't meet a certain number of students, and we have programs and we have reports that are in our system that we can run. So I'm not adding additional staff for any of these programs. These programs will be taking away from classes that aren't other classes that are filled right now. So if I have a class that's running a 4, we may collapse that class and use that staff member to teach one of these new courses that has high student interest in.
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't have much to add, other than it's not unusual that typically in the fall is when we're bringing those revisions to the Ed Programs Committee, largely because of the course description catalog, which is being compiled at that time. Those departments that brought forth course proposals are all in the curriculum writing in the 6-year cycle, where they are revising and looking at their courses to see if they're meeting the needs of our students, and are proposing changes to hopefully create better offerings. As Dr. Muster said, there are no new staff attached with any of these proposals. Most of them, there's only 2 that are new courses. One that can be taught concurrently with another course. So it's going to be taught same room, same time, same teacher. And then another one which adds an additional elective to our social studies department for students in their to fulfill their 4 social studies credits. So those were the proposals that were brought forward there in October, and the reason for the timing.
I have a question, just to refresh my memory.
Yeah.
The cost that's incurred for these courses, whether it's for curriculum, which I think is maybe just for one, training, teacher training, bringing them up to speed on that particular course.
Yep.
And I'm just looking here. I think one book we asked that look at what book they had chosen for the it's not a finance class.
No,
I
the
forgot what the name of it
Economics
is.
and American Society
Economics.
course, that one is not even going to be offered until potentially 26, 27. So there's a projection of what the textbook might cost. It's not a fixed cost, and it would be brought back to the board
Oh, I
once they
wasn't
have
concerned
selected
about the
that
cost.
text.
I was concerned about the book.
Right. Once they've
Yeah.
actually selected it, they would bring that back to Ed Programs
Okay.
for approval.
Okay, so, and what my question was, all of these costs have already been budgeted for, is that correct?
They are in the budget for next year's
So all
curriculum
of that
budget.
information has been.
Yeah, it's part of our budget
submitted,
process that we're
which
currently going
The
through.
budget processes that's going on right now.
Correct. None of those are costs that are incurred for this year.
Okay,
If I'm correct, that budget is in building and in process, so it's not voted on, agreed
Correct.
upon, or anything like that.
Correct.
Mhm.
Correct. It's part of our process right now.
Any other?
Just 2 general comments. Again, going back, maybe my better question for Dr. Dandridge is this question. What are the expectations when somebody wants to introduce a new course or a change in the courses? What are the criteria that are required for that course to be considered in order for it to get to the board? Or aren't there any criteria? It's a question I don't know the answer to, but would like to understand, because I just feel like these things just keep flowing to us. And what's the filter for that? Or can anyone just come up with a new course? I don't know how much I can share about the social studies course, but maybe you can share a little bit about the background of how that came to light related to being on the agenda today. I'll let that up to you. But that's the part that I need to understand. And also then remind us how many students are required in each of those to sign up in order for that course to be run.
I don't know, Dr. Muster, if you have that number. We do have a defined 6-year curriculum cycle, and there is pretty clear criteria as to what it happens in each of those years and what would be looked at. Some of the research that they do, looking at course enrollment and course selection is part of that process. Costs are part of that process. I would be happy. I know we've presented a couple times on that curriculum cycle to Ed Programs, but I'd happy to bring back a presentation to Ed Programs for better understanding for the board on that.
Yeah, and if we don't have expectations around criteria and anyone can just bring any new course to the table, and it comes straight to the board. I would like to understand how we make some changes to that, because I don't want to see every new course that comes down the pike. I think there should be some standards and filters to that. Make sure there's a needs assessment, a return on investment assessment, and it's not just another want instead of maybe a need. And I know this sounds probably terrible to everyone. I'm not opposed to new courses. Don't misunderstand me. But I am not in favor of just continuing to add things everywhere. We talk about the course of materials and the fact that we can use those year over year. Well, that's true, but if there's not enough students for that class, those materials are on a shelf. Correct me if I'm wrong. And what is that number? I still don't know if I heard that number
So
to
we
require
have
to run
a-
these courses.
Yeah, we have a course selection process and then we have a drop add period. We'd like to have a minimum of 12 students at a minimum for certain classes to run, but we're looking more for a sweet spot up into the 20s is where we would like classes to actually run. If they're running under that, there's certain classes where if it's a graduation requirement for a student or it's an AP course, that's part of their courses where it would negatively impact students, we will run classes a little bit lower in those isolated incidents. The other thing that we try to do is overlays, which Dr. Danish was talking about, where we have, let's just say we have an art class where we're teaching one thing with this group of kids, and that we can also teach a second section with different material overlaid in the same class. So creative ways of using all our staff. And at the end of the day, the reason that we do this is student interest and offering things to our students that they want to take and that are relevant. Some of the programming, as you know, I've been in the district a long time. Some of it was a little bit dated. If you remember, we changed some of our literature classes. We got rid of and adjusted some of our coursework to make sure that there was text that students were excited about reading and participating in. And that's all part of our process as administration, which has been occurring in October since I've been in the district. If there's a timing perspective that the board wishes us to look at, that's certainly something we can do.
Think back to my original question. It does not sound like that 12 is a hard stop. So you would run a course with less than 12 in it, depending on the
If it's going to
circumstances.
affect a student graduating, yes, sir.
Okay. And then the second part of that, and is that related to the student's desire for that course, or is that related to a requirement?
It would, there's factors depending, yes. If it's related to the student requiring the course to graduate, or if it's the student just wanting the course, those are different things. What we also have done now, we used to run the same courses throughout the year where they could take, it was offered each semester. So now what we're doing is not offering the course each semester. So we'll only run it one time. So if they don't get it in that junior year, we have to run it at least one time a senior year, or they won't have the opportunity to get it. So we're running pretty thin on some of the coursework stuff. I actually do have a graph that I can share with you with some of the data we're tracking on that moving forward.
I would like to see us tighten that up and have expectations and criteria around what does it take for that to come to the board for approval. I feel like right now, whatever comes up in the moment comes to us. And that's where I would like to understand behind the scenes, what occurs. And if you have a great process and you're declining certain courses because they don't necessarily fit, they're not required, or if I'm just able to come and ask to add a course because I want to teach it, or I want it, or I maybe had some time where I could develop one, that's important to me to understand that.
Yeah.
And I don't think we should just be seeing everything that comes in.
That's not the process. And actually, I think part of the issue is that you're not seeing the front end of it, right? You're only seeing the courses that have been vetted and have gone through that needs assessment and have come to the board for approval. So if there's a better way that we can inform you or include you in some of those conversations, I think that's certainly fair and something that we can look at
Sure.
going
A
forward.
good way to do that would be in advance of a presentation and then coming to a board meeting for approval. It would be nice to see the list and then understand the rationale behind why you're choosing those 3 of the 20 that you received, for example. That would help me feel better about it.
The other thing I think would help is, like you do with the English, the math, whatever, it's a 6-year cycle. We have definitely had proposals mid-year. Like I think we had one in May. This year, it's not just October, but it doesn't seem like I feel like it should be a cycle every 4 years. Only the music ones can be reevaluated. So we're not doing turnover all the time. Like some sort of strategic plan, like we do with all the other curriculum.
The only thing that I'll comment on that is if we took a cycle that long, there would be long periods of time for us that we wouldn't be keeping current with certain courses.
Well, it doesn't have to be 6 years, but there needs to be a cycle, a plan, a strategic plan of when that we look at items.
That's there. And not only the materials would be outdated, but we would have all the budgetary costs in that 1 year. They do spread it out. And they are very strategic about how they do that. But clearly, we can have a better plan for informing the board on what that looks like. And so you can feel more comfortable about these decisions when they come here.
Yes, please, because I hate to have a discussion in a board meeting like this after we heard about it once and then it's here for approval.
Sure.
I would much rather work on that on the back end, but feel compelled to have that discussion when I understand that each of these financial impacts are the gift that keeps on giving financially. And I'm not opposed to those completely, but also we do have to be careful right now. We're in a very, very, I don't want to say critical area from a financial standpoint for the long term of the district. Nobody's going to notice anything over the next 2 years, but decisions that we're making today will fundamentally impact this district 5 to 10 years from now.
I have I seem to remember, please correct me if I'm wrong, that Mrs. Dicely and Mr. Hoffman have talked about how they have committees or select teachers that they bring together and they talk about what they think is needed in the elementary, the middle school, and the high school. I don't think these are like just random courses. I agree that we do need to look and weigh carefully. We have an enormous, long list of courses that are offered for our kids, and I so appreciate that. My own children went here. We want to offer as much as we can that's quality and that really contributes to the education of our children and to their lifelong education and success for the future, particularly in the high school. So this is, if we want them to come and go through the process, but I can remember times sitting and asking Mrs. Dicely, well, who talked about fantasy? And then we had some of the teachers who came to that particular meeting last year, 2 years ago. I don't remember when it was. There was a major overhaul with some of the English classes. And different teachers came in and said, I love this class. I'm thinking of fantasy because she was like, they told me to teach this. And she's like, I don't even like fantasy. But she did her job and came to love it, and has been a successful class.
Yeah.
So I don't want to, I think they do think it through and they're very conscious about that. And if there are some, I guess, budgetary questions that we need to consider when we're planning, then we do need more advance notice as much as possible before October, which is the normal time. The way we change, this is my impression, the way we change the high school is quite different from maybe the way we do with middle school and particularly elementary school, because it's the choices. And, elementary school, our kids, they don't get choices. They may get to pick books in libraries, but they really don't get choices. Middle school, we expand that exploratory, and then in high school, they get a lot more choices. One of the things that I asked her was, are we going to have to hire additional staff? How much is this going to cost? How long will it last? And I don't know which one of I don't recall right now which one was going to be the most expensive curriculum. And maybe it was a class that's going to be around for a while. I don't know. So I don't want to give the impression that Mrs. Dicely, Mr. Hoffman, any of our curriculum people, they just come in and go, hey, we just sat around and we saw an article and we decided we need this.
At the end of the day,
Don't
Mr.
believe
Wog.
that's what they do.
Right, no. And at the end of the day, Mr. Wogomuth, if you're looking for more time to digest between ed and programs and a voting meeting, maybe we can move presentations up and then give more time for question period and maybe have a follow-up period the next ed programs. We're just going to have to bring things a little bit earlier, and then you don't feel like it was presented 1 month and you're voting on it the next month. We still have the timeline. Now, a lot of it's electronic now, and class choice makes things go faster, but we still kind of have a timeline to get things in the course guide for students to select for the upcoming year.
That would be helpful.
would it be helpful tonight if we got more information about why these courses were changed? Would that be helpful, Mr. Vogelman?
Didn't we go
Or-
through that at the
Ed program.
Well, we
Think for the
did.
future.
We did,
Sorry.
but I'm saying if you need more information,
I think for tonight, it's probably a day late and dollar short to make any changes. However, I would recommend that for the future, we reevaluate how this stuff is coming to us and the timing of when we're receiving it, and recognizing that whenever we're adding something, there's traditionally an additional expense somewhere. Even if we're not adding personnel, it might be spreading the classes thinner. It might mean that there would have been the opportunity to consolidate some things that we didn't have. And so there's a lot of things behind the scenes that take place when you start adding courses. And we're not good at taking anything away, but we are good at adding things. When I look at the ratio since I've been on the board, I don't have the exact number, but I know that probably twice as many things have come to us to add as additional offerings. And a handful of things have just been changed or maybe eliminated. And we're not good at taking stuff away because it's not easy because it all looks like good stuff.
Just
But we
stuff-
only have X amount to work with. So I would just suggest moving forward, we reevaluate how this is coming to us because this has been a point of frustration for me since I've been on this board.
Just something to keep in mind. I only have so many sections of teacher sections under the contract. So I can't add anything without taking something away. So unless we're asking for new staff, there is nothing that's being added without taking it away. I have the same number of teaching periods that I can use.
Any other discussion? Okay, I believe we had a first and second, so all those in favor for the health and physical education course? Approval?
Are we voting that one by itself?
Yes, I think that's.
Okay.
Yeah, that's how the motion. Okay, I believe 1, 2, 3, or 7 against. Okay. 7-2, the motion carries. Moving on, and I just want to add before we go to health, the reason the math course wasn't brought up, if you didn't notice in your agendas, it's simply name change for 4 different courses at the high school level. So moving on, need approval for the music course creations, which I believe was modern band and which all kids could take, even some.
I'm sorry, point of order, Mr. Donato. We just voted on the
12F.
the health and physical education.
Correct.
Are we skipping over math?
No, we approved that at the beginning. I was
It's
just
already
adding,
approved.
Okay, all right.
sorry, I was just adding why we didn't
Okay, gotcha.
have that discussion because it was just name change. Okay, so for the music course creation, I believe that's modern band and music productions too. So need a motion to approve that.
so moved.
Thank you. Second,
Second.
Mrs. Johnson and Mrs. Eshelman. Any discussion for that? Okay, all those in favor? Okay, opposed? Okay, motion carries 7-2. And finally, for the social studies course creation, which I believe is to add in for the 26-27 school year, economics in American society. For that motion to approve that.
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Brady. Second.
Second.
Thank you,
Excuse me.
Mrs. Johnson. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Okay, opposed? Okay, that carries 7-2, and I believe that's the end. Motion to adjourn, please.
Did we vote on the, oh, we did that already.
Motion.
Thank you, Mr. Carver. Second.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Maris. All those in favor? Oh, that one carries 9-0. And we are adjourned. Thank you.